Hi, and welcome to Tabletop Talk and Draw. My name is Storn Cook, and this is the intersection between role playing games and illustration. And Lewis Porter had given me a cover to do, and he wanted to use it for another product. So he got me to do the cover for Godlike again. And so he sent me this X-Men cover as inspiration. And so, can we use it in a way that isn't derivative? It isn't a copy, but it is an inspiration. And of course, the answer is, I think, yes. So I provided four thumbs. I think one, two, and four are strong. I think three's a little bit weak. And Lewis ended up going with number one, which was made me totally happy. I would have been happy with any of those. So except three, because I think three is a bit weak. So the idea of sort of some goddess like figure with strange hair, energy like hair, floating over the battlefield. Now, one of the cool things about Clip Studio is you can bring in these sort of three-dimensional mannequins. Now, I posed her with her light source before I started recording because I was futzing around a lot, and I didn't want to have to drag you guys through the futzing around process. So now I've kind of got, where I want her pose to be, and I'm going for a little bit more of an extreme up angle than the thumbnail showed. And that was kind of in the back of my mind when I was doing the thumbnail anyways. And so I'm drawing in some lines and I'm making some decisions. Like I didn't like those feet I felt like they were a little short, so I made them a little longer, and eventually I'll lengthen the back leg there. I felt like the forearm felt a little bit long to me, and so I ended up shortening that. So I'm not just copying that, and I had a little bit of hiccup. My camera froze, and so a little bit of the drawing, like her costuming, was done while I thought I was recording. It didn't record. I apologize about that, but you'll get the gist of it. And so now I'm laying in the ground, literally like rubble on the ground, changing the tunes. You saw my Spotify channel there, and so I had some reference up of, rubble, like I actually had an exploded building, a photograph of that. And I also looked at George Perez, who was an artist in the 80s and 90s who drew the Teen Titans, the Avengers, the X-Men, and various other things for both DC and Marvel. And he was famous for his rubble. And I think it's, even though I kind of go my own way and I don't use those sort of lines and shapes that George did, it wasn't a bad idea to just kind of touch base with someone who's a master of their craft at something particular. And, us artists, we stand on the shoulders of giants for sure. So yeah, I'm just laying in like what I think are interesting shapes, and I'm not particularly worried about the background because I don't think you're going to have a whole lot of focus on that. I want it to read like it's a background, but I want your focus to be on the bodies of the heroes that have been defeated, and of course on the main figure, who's the sort of the dark goddess who's unnamed. I mean, Lewis just kind of said, "Yep, we're just kind of making this stuff up whole cloth." And so right now I'm just kind of getting in some interesting little shapes and some shadows in the background just to sort of you know give an idea of what kind of shape I want. And then I put in a gradient just because I like to work against something, a ground, put her back in. She's on her own layer. Actually, she has two layers, one being the line and then one being the sort of the gray color. I throw in some sky. I decided to go with sort of a blood orange sky because I think that's dramatic and will be fun to read. And you can see me using sort of spray effects for the cloud brushes and stuff like that. And then I start to work in those colors into the background. And there's going to be a lot of push pull with what the color of the background is going to be. But because it's on its own layer, I can adjust that on the fly very, very easily. Now it took me a while to put all this in, and I hope this part isn't too boring for you guys, because I'm just trying to make sure that those shapes kind of read okay before I start throwing the figures on top of them. And I'm liking the sort of the brown and the reds, but I think I do come in a little bit chromatic. And at one point, I actually put a layer on that's completely white and then drop the opacity of that white down just to blur it a little bit. And then I play around with tonal correction. You can see I just popped that window up with tonal correction right then and there. and I'm sort of using a combination of different brushes. This is one of my favorite brushes. It's called the Cube brush. I downloaded that from somewhere. I'm not quite sure. I've got probably 300, 400 brushes for Clip Studio, and in a recent patch, they were able to. And my camera froze yet again. I don't know why it does that. Occasionally it does that. But anyways, in a recent patch for Clip Studio, they gave us the ability to import Photoshop brushes, and that just blew open the doors to all these different types of brushes they can get. Because of course, photo brush has always been, uh, Photoshop has always been the big dog in the drawing programs race, but I like Clip Studio better. To be honest, I like the way their brushes are a little bit more intuitively adjusted, and just the way it feels going down, I much prefer. And we have some three-dimensional tools like the mannequin that we use. There's also a great perspective tool I might have mentioned before that does 1 point, 2 point, 3 point perspective. You can do interiors super, super quick, get those guidelines down, and then expand on that. So yeah, I use a variety of brushes usually when I'm doing stuff, and I'm trying to be a little bit painterly. This cover is different than the other one. This cover is going to be more of a superhero vibe, so I want that line to exist, sort of the comic book inked line. But at the same time, I like being painterly in the way I approach color. So it's that sort of balancing act. I think this would be a good time to talk about, hey, if you guys like these kind of videos, please consider subscribing to my channel. Please consider leaving a comment or just simply liking the video. All that stuff helps out the algorithm and all that thing. And I'm trying to grow this. I'm trying to get this out to more people so I can help artists. Like if you're an artist, please, if you've got a question or a comment about a technique or something like that, please hit me up. I'd be happy to take a look at artwork and give you my 2 cents. I think I'm a pretty good person to do critiques. I think critiques are really important, and I think they're gifts. I think when someone critiques you, it's a gift. So, went back, looked at my thumbnail, and was trying to okay, so now we're going to talk about the assembly. And these are, since I didn't want to reinvent the wheel, these are from our empowered playtest, which is not out yet. But this is the assembly and some of the characters from the assembly. The assembly is a global team. So starting at the top left, we have Dauntless, then we have Defib, and then we have Crimson Erg, then we have Nascent, and then Ubuntu, and then we have Hardsuit. And so I am going to scatter those people around the battlefield. They're the heroes. They got their butts kicked, and now they're lying, down in the dumps. So that is Dauntless going first, and then we had Defib go. I'm going to drape Walker over, not Walker, Nascent over a rock. That's going to be Ubuntu, sort of collapsed over in the corner there. I'm just checking how I draw things and checking out their outfits because these are characters that I've drawn once. I've never, it's not like a comic book where you draw them over and over and over again. So I have to kind of, make sure I'm, keeping some kind of, coherency. And also just, I don't, because I'm making up these characters for this cover in a way. I don't have to, satisfy anyone's previous vision. And I have something in my eye. That's really wonderful. Okay. Um, and then I tend to lighten my sort of scumbled over quick sketches and, go back to inking. And yep, there's Dauntless. Dauntless is my character actually, as is Nascent. So yep, he's a flying brick with gravity powers, and he was taken out by the dark goddess who's floating above him. And yeah, just doing some lines, getting those inks down, struggling with that hand. I drew it a couple of times, but and this is a very long video. I admit this because I've got five characters besides the main figure, and they have to exist in space, and that takes time to figure out and think about and to draw it because whenever you're working figures in perspective, uh you got to be very careful. It's just a time consuming process, and when I go to color them, that's another time consuming process. This cover takes me a lot longer than the first Godlike cover, which was very painterly, had one giant silhouette and a very simple background. And now we go into Defib, who is my friend Rick's character, um, and yeah, just sort of trying to, and I'm not worried about absolutely nailing um, the figures and the anatomy stuff. I mean, I want it to read correct, but that's not where the main focus is going to be. And I think the color is going to support a lot of that. And yeah, just one of the reasons I'm sort of closing off shapes around the background is so these guys can all exist on their own layer, and that will allow me to color quickly. And then if I want to make an adjustment to the background, I can do that without having to upset what I've put down for the figures. Um, Nason is my sort of master of dreams and protects the realm against nightmares, and he's sort of my Doctor Strange kind of character. He's an Aborigine from Australia, and he's absolutely one of my favorite characters I've ever created. I absolutely love him. He's a lot of fun, and he's a lot of fun to play, and he's kind of fun to draw. Although this is only my second time drawing, not a whole lot on his with his back down. So um, yeah, and then then I get into Ubuntu. I apologize for the quick flashes, but I didn't want to drag this video out any longer than it already is. So Ubuntu has a necklace. I wasn't quite happy with the head size, and so I changed that a little bit. You know, he's a little bit more collapsed in a with limbs up, like that one knee and that one arm up and stuff like that. And he has a fighting stick, so I changed the angle of the arm a little bit. Eventually, I'll go back and put that fighting stick in, go in and I was playing around with some different leg positions, but I eventually ended up going with sort of the one that I liked originally. That hand felt a little small to me, so here's his fighting stick, and his fighting stick is sort of made out of some, super metal. We're not going to see a whole lot of Crimson Erg. Crimson Erg is actually an NPC. He's never been played by anybody. Ubuntu is played by my friend Jeff, and yeah, so just kind of, I don't know why there was such a big pause there. Maybe the dog got out. I apologize about that, but yep, just getting. I had to look at her a couple of times. What I should have done was probably had their pictures up on my other screen, but I didn't, and I kept sort of bouncing back and forth. It probably drives you crazy. I'll have to remember that for next time. And then I do Hard Suit, and Hard Suit's played by my friend Jim, and she's sort of an Iron Man type, power armor. And I eventually decide to take her out because I didn't think she was quite readable at the size that she was, and I felt like we've established enough. And there goes my recording again. I'm going to stop that. I don't know why it freezes like that. It just does every once in a while. It's very odd. I apologize about that. But picking up, anyways, I didn't feel like Hard Suit was super readable at the size that I was drawing and at the angle that I was drawing, sort of like collapsed in the rubble. And I sort of felt like, you know what, the other heroes that are down are selling the idea that this is a team that's been defeated well enough. I don't really need Hard Suit there, and also Hard Suit's going to be very, if Lewis wants to put any kind of text blur below the main title, uh, that might be really close and not needed. And yeah, so one of the things I'll do is I will quickly sample the color that I've used before in the previous drawings, so I don't have to come up with that color again. And it's just an easy way of getting the main color down, and then we can go and create highlights and shadows and stuff like that. and keep building these characters along. I think this was a pretty time consuming process because these are not the hardest costumes I've ever had to draw. I mean, I tend to do costume design on sort of a sleek and simple, terminology. I mean, I do like belts and pouches because you got to keep your keys somewhere. Um, but I don't go for tons and tons of lines like a lot of the modern characters are starting to get. And I still have, I think, probably a little bit of that 80s sensibility, or maybe Legion of Superheroes kind of sensibility. And the assembly was very much a Legion of Superheroes type group. I mean, I have three characters, and some people have two, and we have lots of NPCs all in the assembly, and it's like, they come from all over the world, so it's not intergalactic like the Legion of Superheroes, but the roster is big, and you sort of have a rotating roster, and there's certain missions will take on certain characters, will be more appropriate for certain characters, and so we'll play them when it's appropriate. um, it's a fun game. It's a lot of fun. um, I like defib quite a bit as a concept. Sort of electrical character. She's had horrible luck in the game, by the way. She's rolled really badly and has become a bit of a joke. In fact, when I showed this to my players, they were like, "Well, of course we lost. Defib was with us," and yeah. So Rick takes some lambasting for that. Um, you know, White characters who are supposed to be wearing white, really kind of difficult. And I actually struggle with defib a little bit because she's too white against the background, and she pops out compared to all the other characters. And I want her to stand out somewhat, but I don't want her to overshadow the other characters. So I ended up going into just her and darkening her across the board. And so the other thing about white is, if you just put down white, it's really bright, and it doesn't read very correctly. So you want to put down, um, blues and purples and greens that are almost gray, and sort of, so you have almost a rainbow, but they're all extremely pale colors, and it will still read as white, but it won't overwhelm the rest of the drawing, the rest of the painting. So, um, yeah, Nascent here is it's got some really dark colors. I mean, his skin's dark. His this was all purposeful for the concept of the character, but not the easiest to draw. It's sort of the opposite problem that I have with Defib, is like, okay, how can I keep him from totally overwhelming him? Ubuntu is the sort of the Captain America, I believe, of um, I want to say Uganda. Jeff will have to uh, correct me if I'm wrong. It's either Nigeria or Uganda, and those are the national colors of the flag. I actually, when he was talking about the character, I actually very purposely looked at the flag and adopted a lot of the colors. Um, so that was a lot of fun, and I really like this character, and he's wonderfully realized by Jeff. He's a total blast of a character, and I look forward to when we get to play this game again, which will be a while because we're playtesting my fantasy games. So that's Empowered has been put on the back burner, and I know that another playtest is coming up called Secret Worlds, which is sort of Hollywood action spies in a conspiracy laden world. Um, Now you notice that, like, I'm the neck area and the thighs are completely black, and I will go in there and what we call activate that color, activate that black area by scumbling in very subtle blues and browns and stuff like that. You can see I'm just starting to do that right now, and so it will still read as black. Like the uniform is black, but it won't be so black and so dense that, again, it grabs too much attention to itself as a shape, and not read as person's legs that happens to be wearing really dark colors. Yeah, here I'm putting some time into hard suit, and that was time that I ended up just yeah not loving. Playing around with the background again, like okay, now that I've got these figures here, let's weigh them against the background and see if it feels right before I get into painting the goddess herself. And so it's constant push and pull. It's constant negotiation of shape and line. Now I wanted the goddess to be very dark. That was something that Lewis was saying. You know, let's make her look like she's gone bad. Let's make her appear as if things aren't going right. So I decided that a really dark color scheme, and then I'm going to punctuate that with an insane pink purple, and that was fun. I really like the design of this. There's the pink purple. I think it's a little reminiscent of the Green Lantern villainous Star Sapphire, um, and not intentionally so. It's just that's where I decided to kind of come from. So I'm sort of putting some smoke or energy effects in her hair. Is it hair? Is it energy? We don't know. We don't care. We get to make this crap up. You know, get my Kirby Crackle brush in there and start slapping some stuff around. Get some purples in there. I want to make the pink parts of her suit, the purple pink parts of her suit, sort of glow. So one of the ways I do that is I keep stepping um, the chroma up. So I keep making it lighter and lighter and lighter, and sort of more and more bright, and intense in color. I play around with this for a bit because I think I kind of went too far at one point. I backed it up and I continued to sort of put down some color there. And yep, there I took out a hard suit. Um, I just didn't feel like she was working there. I could have redrawn her in another place, but I decided, I've got enough heroes here. Again, I go with the Kirby dots. I'm trying to create sort of energy effects around her hands, and this is just playing around with making several layers. And there I stopped again. So hang on. I sometimes don't. I don't know why I'm going so slow. That's so weird. I don't look at my camera. I don't look at myself while I'm talking about this. I'm looking at either the artwork or the camera, so I sort of can interact with you. Um, I'm not sure why it's doing this, but anyways, back to the artwork. That's the important thing. To heck with my, you know, talking head. That's just to make sure that that I'm there and I'm narrating this as we go along. So I'm working blues and purples into her suit, and sort of the idea of kind of you know um, that she kind of glows from the pink purple energies that she wields, and go back in and okay, she's down, so now I've got to think about, is that background working. I lighten up her hands a little bit, and get the hair in there because I sort of obliterated that on some kind of drawing thing. Again, kind of get more, I keep pushing it more and more purple. I start working some shadows underneath the bodies of the team that has fallen, and this is something that's fairly quick because, again, like I said, I keep them on their own layer. So whatever I do underneath them, I can go right underneath them, and that doesn't disturb the drawing of them. And so that's the why you have to have, if you're doing something like this, very good layer discipline, because it's so easy. I think all of us artists have done it who work digitally. Start drawing on the wrong layer, and then it's like, ah, you get really annoyed. Yeah. There's memes on it that artists pass to each other. So, anyways, we're just zooming along here, and starting to just put the final touches in. I decide to put a little bit of haze from the battlefield in, just a little bit. Excuse me. So yeah, I hope you like this. Did we find inspiration from an X-Men cover? Did I think so? We've got sort of a beaten team at the hands of someone very powerful. She might not be Dark Phoenix because you don't know her. And there's the final piece. I hope you like that. If you like this, please check out one of my next videos. There'll be a drawing. There'll be a little square for it somewhere. And thank you. Keep on keeping on.